Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Beto O'Rourke, El Paso, Texas. So for Dr. McCarthy, some of these questions you may have already answered, and they may be repetitive, but I'm new to this, and I want to make sure that I fully understand it. You mentioned that January '08 was the start date for this initiative for the eye injury and vision registry.
I mentioned, I'm sorry, this is Dr. McCarthy. I mentioned that the act that established it was January 2008.
That's when it became law?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then the funding was appropriated the next year?
I don't have the date of the funding. I can tell you the date that the MOU was signed between DOD and VA, and that was October 2009.
And the backup I received shows that at least $5 million of that funding has been spent, and I hope I'm speaking about the same pot of money. There was a total of $6.9 million appropriated to it. $5 million has been spent. What has that $5 million been spent on?
Okay, let me just back up.
And in the plainest terms possible, just because we're limited on time.
Okay, I'm sorry, and again, it's Dr. McCarthy. We have 2.8 of that 6.9 million set aside for the contract, so that brings us to 4.1. The 4.1 million has been used for salaries for individuals as we've ramped up the employment over the past 5 years, and in addition to education and training events. And I would yield to Dr. Lawrence for more details about that if you like.
Not just yet.
Yes.
Thank you, though. You, in responding to an earlier question about how long it's taken, you said it's regrettable, but that you also mentioned that we're on schedule and on budget. So when this became law in January of '08 and when the funding was appropriated in the year thereafter, was it always understood that June 9 of 2014 was when we would go out to bid or make a decision on closing those bids?
Dr. McCarthy, again, actually, it was always understood that by the end of fiscal year 2015, the registry would be operational.
Okay, thank you. And it does, just from a layman's perspective, seem like a very long time. Dr. Benishik compared it to the amount of time that we spent in World War II and the number of people who are affected by these issues who do not have access to this care. And I'd like to take one that we had as an example today from Mr. Fugate. Based on his testimony from '09, to the extent that you're familiar with it, and his testimony today, do you have anything to offer in response to concerns that he raised or the specific case study that he's offered, and how we are or have not yet learned from it and are or are not yet able to provide the kind of care that might have provided for a better outcome in Mr. Fugate's case?
This is Dr. McCarthy again, and I'm happy to be in touch with Mr. Fugate after the hearing. I'd be interested in offering support in that way. I do want to mention the 33 process improvement activities that were identified as part of the Vision Center of Excellence calls, in which the people in the field and the people at Vision Center of Excellence and the people at the polytrauma centers have worked together to try and solve those kind of communication issues.
Okay, and that might be good for myself and the entire committee to understand from your perspective Mr. Fugate's specific case and how that case in 2014 might be handled differently, and how the interoperability between DOD records and medical recommendations and decisions and those in the VA might provide for a better outcome, or might not, where we still have some ground to make up. And so I think it's very important for us, if nothing else, to learn from his specific case and ensure that it is not repeated. I think you could probably agree with me on that.
Yeah.
And then for Ms. Landfried and the Section 508 issues, I think this discussion today is happening within the larger context of the American public's and Congress's frustration with lack of accountability within the VA. And so, again, just looking at the backup and all of the chances that the VA had to come into compliance, the waivers that were issued to allow the VA to remain out of compliance, the fact that on some of the most critical issues, like the ability to fill out a VA form that Mr. Keble brought to our attention, it seems like not only would that be a benefit to the sight-impaired veteran, it would be a benefit to the VA to be able to have that information entered there by the veteran himself or herself instead of having to go to a VBA office. How do you answer in the plainest terms possible what I feel is very justified frustration at the amount of time that the VA has had to get it right? And you and Mr. Sheehan spoke earlier of the processes involved, all the things you got to do, which are really lost on me. I think we just really want to know what has taken so long, where is the accountability, when will you be able to assure this committee and the veterans who depend on these services through the web that you'll be 100% compliant?
Sure, I'd be happy to address that. We are absolutely committed to making sure that all of the information that veterans need about benefits, about health care available to them, and everything else that we have to offer is available to them as electronic products through our websites and forms. And the memo that was mentioned earlier by the chairman, that was, I think, a wake-up call and accountability for us to say there's these waivers out there. What are we doing with them?
With the chairman's indulgence, could I just ask you a really quick pointed question? Give us a date by when every single page on every single VA website will be 508 compliant.
And the reason that we keep talking about the process is that if I was 100% compliant tomorrow, new systems are going to come online, additional forms are going to be added, additional web pages are going to be added, additional documents are going to be added.
This does not build confidence in you and what you're doing and what our veterans can expect. And I would hope that you could come back to this committee with a set date, and from that date, we're 100% compliant, and every day therefore forward, we will be 100% compliant. I think that's what we're asking. I don't think it's too much to expect, and I think that's what the veterans that we serve deserve. So with that, I yield back to the chair.